because of our police and fire department.
Anything else that you value in the city? It could be, yes, our public services as well, or services provided by the nonprofit sector, anything. Okay, next one. How do you view the overall aesthetics of the community? It can be the overall community, it can be parts of town, it can be, this is where we can talk about anything planning needs to work on with our codes to make it better. Anything that you want to make sure you like about the aesthetics, like during the murals we heard, keep the brick buildings, you know. So what do you think about the aesthetics of the community?
I think it's still tired. It has a lot of work to be done.
What particular areas do you think?
I think downtown could use some freshening up as far as potential renovation to our older buildings to try and revitalize them. I know we've done some work already in those areas, but being able to make it more aesthetically pleasing for people to come.
Make sure that our buildings stay in good condition and maybe some beautification. Anything else on the aesthetics of the community?
I drive the 2741 corridor a lot. And when you go out of downtown and you're driving around in the trees add so much. You know, you see a lot of agricultural fields on the way to Newberry, and those are beautiful in their own right. But just that tunnel of trees that we have is really, it's breathtaking to me.
I'll say breathtaking tree canopy.
That sounds way better than what I said.
Well, you said it. I just switched around the words. Yeah, that's what I noticed in Vancouver. I'd never seen tree canopies like that before, and so I just kind of driving. Oh, spent a lot of time driving. That's actually what my kids said when they came down here. People were like, "What do you think of High Springs?" I just kept saying, "There's lots of trees. There's so many trees."
We've been hearing about the lighting downtown for years. We've been talking about doing something about it, and we haven't. So we have lights that turn on, but not that do the job they probably should.
I think when you talk about downtown, you need a cohesive color story for your buildings and a cohesive lighting story for your buildings. Those two work in tandem. Those two things will change the entire way downtown looks.
It's a color story and lighting story. Do you want to expand on that anymore? Because it sounds really like on the color story part.
So you would just make whatever your color story is. Hey, we're going to be red, white, and blue.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what our color story is.
Yeah, okay.
And then one building would attribute, oh, well, we're going to use reds, and another, whatever your story is. Maybe you want to go with a bluer color story, whatever that is. Pick your theme, pick your tones, and then everybody would choose from within that tone.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not voting for an all-American downtown.
No, I like that. I like
Does Christy have input on that? Because I know that when people want to paint in the historic district, there is a process that we go through. Do we have something set, that you use your guidelines?
We need better guidelines. We need more specific colors. Right
choosing a palette. So you guys would choose your palette, whatever that chose to be, whatever choice you make, and then they would choose from within that palette.
Yeah, that would make life easier. And that's one of the things we need to write in planning is get better historic, more specifics, just historic guidelines. So, yes, sir.
There's a lot of noise pollution in Hot Springs. I live a block and a half off of 441 and 41. And I live on a minor traffic artery that runs right in front of my house. And I'm sitting on my front porch listening to my radio. Loud car or truck goes by, and I can't hear what's on the radio. There's quite a bit of noise pollution in Hot Springs.
Some is from trucks. Trucks are an ongoing issue.
We've been pretty lucky with the types of signs people have displayed and chosen to go with, but our sign ordinances, in a lot of cases, can be pretty permissive. So in terms of aesthetics, I think we need to stay on top of the type of signage that's allowed in the different areas, because what's appropriate on 441 and downtown is obviously different. But also, I would never want to see large pole signs. And at one point, we had prohibited them within the city, which is why when the Shell changed ownership and it changed to Shell, they had to take the big BB sign down and put it down on the ground. But because we had, like, I don't know if you remember, what was it, 50 feet tall or something? I mean, it was huge right up there. And when it went down, it just looked so much better.
I agree. So we need to fix the sign ordinance. That's probably one of the next things after landscape, which we're far along, but there's a few more things. So far, what Christy and I have done is when they've come in, we've just been kind of asking and they've been agreeing. Like Tractor Supply was going to do a larger pole sign and then they agreed to come down. There's been people have been really good about it, but all it takes is one person who doesn't want to work with us and they can do a lot more than what's come in recently. So Ross is exactly right. Okay, well, moving on to the next. What do you think about the overall quality of life in High Springs? Like, what things do you overall, what do y'all think about it? What can we do to improve upon it? What do you like? What do you want to see? And also think about the different ages of people. How are we doing as far as the kids, the children in the community, the teenagers, the seniors? How are we doing on the quality of life for the different segments of our population?
We need to give more resources to our Parks and Recreation Department so that they have the staff to do programming for all those different segments that you talked about. We have really decent facilities, but many of them are focused around team sports. And I noticed in the surveys that we'll be getting to, it was a high priority for most of the commissioners about a community building or community center that's larger, multi-purpose building. But there are a lot of things you could do if you had staff, even if you didn't have a building like that yet. Elliot?
Aren't you growing some money trees now? Yeah. No, I agree. We do. You nailed it.
Waited to plant the money tree, and they don't bloom for 10 years.
Oh,
So if we'd
okay.
done it earlier, when it wasn't so much of an issue, we'd be
Right.
better off.
Right.
I would like to see something in place that would be beneficial to our senior population.
So as we're trying to get together the mayor's youth council, it'd almost be good to have, you know, some
Yes.
input from something where we go out to seniors and just try to facilitate some input from them specifically, you know, because we can come up with things and find a way to fund them, but we might do the wrong thing. So we definitely need to get some input on what they would like.
We can do one of our surveys and see what kind of ideas they come up with.
I think after we get some more feedback from this, it'll help guide what survey we're gonna do. And I think I'm going to vet it through y'all a little bit too, because there's so much information that's needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing right here, so we need to increase the individual wealth of families and individuals. Last time I checked, median household income in High Springs was less than Newberry. It's only somewhere in the sixties. So we need to increase the median household income.
I think one way to do that is to be more proactive in going after businesses that provide jobs, like so that we diversify our mix of businesses. That could help. There's some ways to do that. You know, the education, always big, maybe partnering with University of Florida. So yes, I agree. We can always do that. Anything else on the quality of life?
Yeah. People here, in terms of the quality of life, they come here to downshift. It's kind of a slower speed certainly than Gainesville and any large community, but they come here to enjoy the outdoors. They put down their phones and they look up. And it's so refreshing. I mean, you can drive through downtown at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night and it's pretty much empty on Main Street, but that's part of it, I think. People here are very rooted in family. And I like the pace.
So I think to tie in Catherine and Ross, when we say they've come to downshift, the quality of life is about being with family, and we talk about the downtown corridor, it would behoove you to have more family events, both during the day and at night, in your downtown, growing that downtown, growing those businesses, thereby growing your tax base, increasing your median income, and growing a community spirit. You've got a
We got
farmer's
that on
market.
video, right?
You've got a farmer's market
That was
right now
good.
that is desolate. 7 nights a week. It is a beautiful covered space with lighting. You guys own a PA system. Start doing things. I'm sure Chief Shepherd is more than happy to put you one police officer down there to make sure nobody gets crazy. But in Catherine's vein, I don't think anybody's getting crazy.
Amy has a whole white binder of stuff ready to go. We're doing the farmer's market revamp. Have you seen any of our surveys or anything?
I've seen your survey, yeah.
Yeah. I'd encourage you to fill that out because that's just one part of it. There's a lot more to do besides that. But
Maybe look at other places besides just the farmer's market. Community activities,
oh yes, more things like yoga under the pavilion.
or just
yeah.
having them in different places, whether
Oh,
it be
yeah.
back here behind City Hall, or even over at the park or sports complex or something like that. Have them in different places throughout downtown, and maybe ease some of the congestion burden on Friday nights in that particular area of town.
That's a good idea. I've been in some communities where we've done what's called Hop a Park. And so you make sure you have different things in different parks, and it's kind of cool. It gets everyone excited. But it doesn't have to just be parks, you know, it can be. And it's not everyone can always get to downtown, so we need to do things all over. Anything else on quality of life?
We need to be very concerned about the school here. The school is getting way overcrowded. Even though that's under the school board, it's still our business, it's in our city. So we need to be concerned about. The school is getting way overcrowded.
I think it's fair. So we've had some conversations with them, we need to have more. So yes, I agree, we need to get on, I noted that. Anything else on quality of life? Okay, next one. How would you rate High Springs as a place to live, work, and visit? So you can kind of do those if you go to the next slide, Kevin. So live has to do with what do you think of the housing options in the city? You know, one thing I like about High Springs is I feel like we need more housing, obviously, but I'm not supposed to say what I think here. But we do have different levels of housing here. It's not all one level. So typically you want a community where your children can go up here, they can go away, they can get their first home, second home, retire in place, community where it's not exclusionary. Some communities, as you grow, a mistake that can be made is they end up just going for one housing type and then it becomes exclusionary. So trying to get a mix of housing types. So what do you think about our housing options and what do you envision that you want for housing going into the future?
I guess I'll start. I think we're focusing too much on planned development and not on what High Springs has always been, like the larger spaces, the congestion, the small lots. I don't think lend themselves well to the community.
I think, though, to champion off that a little bit is everybody loves the Edgemoors and the Cinnamon Hills and all those subdivisions and whatnot, absolutely. But there is a need in this town for the houses to go on smaller lots as well. As much as maybe I wouldn't want to live there, for people to have options for more. I'm glad to see that some apartments are coming in. I'm not a fan of all of them, though. But to see more of that, to have more options for people. People want to be here, and I understand why. It's a great place to be. I would love to say, we're just going to shut it down to 1 acre lots, but that's just not feasible. It's just not reasonable.
So I have focusing too much on planned developments, keep larger spaces, and also the need for housing to go on small lots. So we like both. How do y'all feel?
To piggyback on that, when you're starting out as a young couple and wanting to raise a family, you can't afford the Edgemoor, Cinnamon Hills, or whatever. You have to start small. And there just isn't a whole lot here in Gainesville. There are building smaller homes in Gainesville, High Springs. They are building some small homes, and that's good to see. Apartments coming in, that's good to see too. Because people just don't have any place to live in the city of High Springs. They can't afford to go out to these larger lots and pay for those, so they need something else, another alternative.
So I'll say some affordable housing for starters.
I don't like affordable
Okay,
housing.
so
Just
okay, homes for
Starter
starter
homes.
home.
there you go.
Starter homes.
There you go.
As you say, this for us with this town, with age is diverse, so we need to really start looking at having facilities for seniors that don't want the big yard, don't want the backyard, just a nice place to live the latter days and in a nice place.
To follow up on that, wasn't that part of the Bridalwood pitch? Was that there would be a place in that community that would be dedicated to seniors? That was one of the appeals for me.
It's right in the core. I don't know what year they would get to that.
But that
I
was
know
still part of the plan.
That's something they're really excited about.
Well, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Williams. That's definitely a need, especially if we want to keep the seniors here and make sure we can take care of them too, so.
Well, there's wait lists for places like
Yeah.
that. People it's a big deal. It's a big situation everywhere.
There's a lot of vacant land in the old part of High Springs. Florida Homes built all these new homes over in the Douglas area. That land has been sitting there for years, vacant. Florida Homes came along and bought it and built homes in it. There are other areas in High Springs that are the same way. Vacant land in the old part of High Springs that could be used for homes.
You know, we're trying to keep up with the vacant lots because we had some success with Habitat and National Housing Development Corporation and Florida Homes as well. So they're continuing to call us to see if we have any more vacant lots, and so we're scouring and seeing what we can have and going through the process again, hopefully.
What was the size of that Habitat home?
Gosh, I don't even know. Do you know, Christy?
1,140 square feet, I believe.
1,144? It's a good size for both a starter home and exactly what Commissioner Williams was talking about, a senior home.
Right.
That 1,100 square foot to 1,300 square foot home, it's a nice footprint that can be put on a reasonable lot at a reasonable price.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's agreement with everyone's comments about the need for some diversity in our housing stock. And the only part I'll add to that, I've noticed a lot of the people working at the businesses in town, particularly the restaurants, they can't live here and they'd like to. And they're coming from Columbia County and Gilchrist County and Chiefland and Lake City and areas where they found they don't necessarily like their neighborhood, but it's affordable. And they'd rather live closer.
People should be able to, that work here should be able to afford to live here. No one else try to read any of this? It's not cursive or printing, it's like its own category. Okay, anything else on housing that anyone would like to add? Okay, the next question I think has to do with the mixture of commercial businesses in the city. As far as what do you think about it from many standpoints, from the jobs businesses provide, the mixture between industrial, office, retail, restaurants, entertainment, from what, you need to not have to go other places for, to be able to do as much as you can within your community. What is your thought of the mixture of the commercial businesses and the different segments and where they're located and how, more businesses are coming in, the new businesses that are coming in, such as we have the Sweetmeats that was at the last council meeting, but we also have some more restaurants like the Watershed. I mean, what do you want to see? And so mostly, a lot of what's coming in is the retail and restaurants. Where do you want our focus to be on?
I think that has a lot to do with what do we want our identity to be. I mean, if you look at Alachua, they're biotech. They are the biotech hub. Newberry is branding themselves as the agricultural center. I think, how do we brand ourselves? We're a destination town, kind of a bedroom community. But I think that in terms of the core needs, people who live here know where to get what they need, I would hesitate for me to go big box. I mean, Tractor Supply is great, but it's just the right size. It has a real diverse, set of goods and whatnot there. But, the Lowe's and the Home Depots of the world would alter our identity. I don't know what we're missing though. We got a lot of hair places, a lot of restaurants. I don't know.
So to me, that Tractor Supply is, it's not small or large, it's kind of like that medium,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
in between retail.
Yeah,
I think Tractor Supply fit a market.
Right.
That's not about the size of that store necessarily, it's the market of that store. She's absolutely right. I don't need another Lowe's. I know where the Lowe's is. I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't need a Home Depot. I know where that is. I'm good with that. The Tractor Supply fit a need. There's a need for those products
Right.
in this market. That's why that was a good fit. I'm with Catherine. I do not think you want to go big box. I think with big box comes all of the things you just said you didn't want or that you wanted to keep in your town.
I've been in a conversation with one of my neighbors. They would like to see Walmart in Alachua, which was discussed several years ago, and I was very happy to see that it did not because of the intersection there at I-75 and
Yeah.
in that area. It's dangerous now, and it would be more so then. The biggest reason why it was not put there was because of the aquifer. There was going to be issues there. Still, their perception is it would be so much nicer to go down to Alachua, see the Walmart. Alachua is 25 minutes straight, easy driving down on 441. It's just, I can't, the traffic already is so bad in Alachua. And if we put it in High Springs, we know what High Springs is already with the traffic. Big box just doesn't appeal to me. I, as a resident, have been pleased to see more doctor's offices open up, dentist offices open up. One doctor I've been able to eliminate in Gainesville because she's at SciMed, and the blood work I can get done there as well. I don't have, that's 2 trips I don't have to make in Gainesville. So particularly for the seniors, the fewer trips that we have to make down there, other than Walmart, is better for us. And Tractor Supply has been a perfect fit for our family. And I like the restaurants, the diversity that we have. We've been growing very well in that area. So I'd like to see us keep small scale in that area, not big boxes.
I'm gonna change medium retail to small scale retail.
Oh, well, no, if somebody wants medium, but.
Small to
but-
medium retail.
But we just don't want big boxes, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is looking for a Walmart, Target,
Yeah,
Home Depot. Nobody is looking for those names.
right.
We are looking for I so apologize. They are looking for a smaller, more mom and pop, reasonable, sole proprietorship type environment.
Mom and pop, unique.
Yeah, and the comments about like Tractor Supply fitting the market are dead on. You know, I was really disappointed when REI decided to put a store in Gainesville because they're always a regional draw. And you look at their range of products that they have and how unique they are around the country, and their store would have been a perfect fit for High Springs. And they're really struggling in Gainesville, and they're wondering why. And
I'm sorry, what?
REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated, it's a national co-op that does outdoor equipment. But they thought they needed to be next to the U of F. So something about the data they received said our second store in Florida will be Gainesville instead of considering someplace like us. And they would have been a great fit here.
I think that's why we need to get some data that's more specific to High Springs, because the stuff you run, like they run, the commercial realtors, it's just kind of stuff that's regurgitated, that's not specific to your community. So people sitting in a big city have no idea what's going on. So we need to be proactive in explaining what's going on with our community. We've been talking about that, Amy and I. So,
I think that has to do a lot with getting your demographic information correct.
right.
And getting it available, because, just so everybody knows, I looked it up as we were sitting here. The median family income in High Springs is $72,000 a year. $72,000 a year is a far cry from $60,000 a year and speaks to a different market segment. if you're able to speak to that different market segment and say, hey, look, we have this number of people who have this strata of income who can then be purchasing your product, you're gonna get a different level of retail willing to establish business.
I noted your comment, and then I guess what I'm also hearing from you, Vice Mayor, is the stores that kind of fit our niche stores that fit High Springs, such as anything outdoors. Obviously, the springs and all the state parks, that would be niche business.
Honestly, things like the bike shop, a paddleboard shop, being able to purchase outdoor stuff like that makes sense for your area.
Right.
It was really sad to see the bike shop go.
Thank you. Anything else on the commercial businesses? What about the jobs?
One thing that I think that we're missing just in this corner of the county uniquely that most everybody else has is an ER, a small scale medical facility ER. And I mean, it would make sense for that to be somewhere on the 441 corridor, and I don't know, if there's any interest in that or not, but it's one thing we don't have. I mean, we go to Jonesville if we, when we have a need.
I would be interested. I'm really clumsy.
Yeah.
Are they Palms Medical? Are they not open yet? But they are going to have an ER.
We talked about it.
Okay, they might, but
That's what I was gonna say. I thought I had heard that too. Yeah, they were gonna put in an emergency type thing. Because I agree with you, we need one. We definitely need one.
Bruce, didn't we have a medical group that wanted to come a few years ago, and they couldn't because we hadn't built out our infrastructure? But now that we have the third well and more, the ability to do more capacity and some other improvements we've made in lines, does that change?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion with Palms Medical, but there's also rumors that there's going to be a standalone going into one of the neighboring towns. We haven't heard anything, or I haven't. I don't know if you have, but if I had a guess with where the growth is right now, I would say it's probably going to go to Alachua. Now, who does that? I don't know. Whether it's North Florida or Shands, but one of them will build a standalone up this way, I would say within the next 3 years or so.
Alachua would still be closer, so that would be good.
Yeah.
When will we know if Palms is going to do that in terms of their business model? Because that would ideally, obviously, be a great location for us.
their site plan, I thought their site plan showed it. It has an area for the ambulance, doesn't it?
Pharmacy too.
They also have a lot of room that they could expand. There's a
They do,
lot of,
they do.
like, land out there.
Yeah, okay.
But there's a lot more to them just putting an ER in and saying, hey, we're gonna put an ambulance bay in. They've got to get state approval, Department of Health approval. Alachua County has to sign off on it through the certificate of need, so they can actually transport there. It's got to be approved by the medical director. They have to go do so many services and things like that. So they could do a walk-in, like clinic ER type deal, but it wouldn't get a transport, if that makes sense. So it would bypass that to go somewhere else. But anything in a step in the right direction is a step in the right direction.
I've also heard that they're doing dentistry. Anybody know?
That's one of the rumors as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Dentistry.
So, is there any other commercial businesses that you would like to see, or any that you don't want to see? Because any you don't want to see, Christy and I have worked a couple days times on updating the chart of permitted uses. So if there's anything you don't want to see, so we know for our next go around, obviously go to Plan Board too for their input. Because we have a lot of kind of different shops wanting to come in at different times. And we'll look at our chart, and we're like, don't have that one. So if there's anything you don't want to see, please let us know so that we can keep a tally of those things. Okay, so, next one. How do you feel about access to retail, dining, and entertainment? As you know, we're getting more restaurants downtown. There's always interest in, downtown. I know a lot of people, there are some vacancies there. From what I understand, a lot of it may be due to the price, that people aren't going into them. But do y'all have any thoughts on what you would like to see downtown that's not downtown, or how you would like downtown to look in the future?
I second that. That's one of the big things I've heard too. When I talk to people, there's just nowhere to park. And then you have certain businesses that their parking lot's full of everybody else's cars and nobody can come to their business because of that. So we have got to figure out parking downtown because there is none.
Okay.
It actually detours a lot of people, local people, from coming downtown. As a relatively new business owner downtown, that's our biggest input that we hear from people who walk in the door. You park downtown, they can't get out because of traffic. Just trying to find somewhere to park is actually what they need.
Okay. We will think about that going into this budget process. Note to Diane and Amy. So we can get going on something.
Well, and if you're gonna look at parking too, I think you need to develop some spaces that are suitable for RVs and vehicles pulling a trailer. Because it's not uncommon to see people who wanna stop at a shop like Christie's and they got a boat in the back of them. And if it's the right time of day, there are places they can pull in sideways, and they'll park or whatever, but other times of day, they can't. And given the nature of the people that travel through High Springs, that would be very accommodating.
And on any given night, there are RVs that will pull up and will overnight park. Farmers market, private property.
Not legal?
It shouldn't be. Yeah.
It's, private property, of course, is easy to
Yeah.
solve, but.
No, at the park it shouldn't be happening. So. Well, no one should be staying overnight. Yeah. So what about, up and down 441? I mean, what do you want to see that look like in the future?
Who owns vacant land out there? I guess that's one question, is how much say are we gonna have? Or are you saying, what would we like to attract there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not really who owns it.
Mhm.
You know, what do you want to see go out there? Because people will call the city sometimes and say, what do you envision for 441 or for 27? What is it you want? I mean,
I'm all about more restaurants. People have said that over and over again. You know, more restaurants, different options and whatnot, because we don't want to leave, you know? So if there's only 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, you know, you put those on rotation. As much as people eat out now, especially I know with my family, with the sporting events we do nonstop, we're lucky if we get a home cooked meal, you know, 3 times a week. So, you know, just more options.
Well, we keep hollering the income in High Springs. So we need jobs that pay more than $12 an hour, $15 an hour. So when I say businesses, and I'm talking about the smokestacks and all that type of stuff, we're in a technical world right now. That's what we're up to, trying to focus on, bringing different type of businesses as, I don't know, building computers or whatever, where you can sit behind the desk all day and customer service, but some kind of way we got to start attracting the businesses where people can make a good wage and stay in High Springs. I left because there wasn't no jobs here, no paying jobs. And I had to go to the county jail to work because there's more money in Gainesville. So we need to start trying to attract jobs. We say we want to build houses. Why and where you going to build houses people can't afford to live in? So we really, really need to start focusing on good paying jobs. Don't get me wrong, restaurants are good, but it ain't gonna pay the wages that to try to feed a wife and 2 kids.
Right.
And pay the water bill and the light bill and I wouldn't say cable, but most people don't have cable these days. But we really need to start focusing on those type of businesses. You know, I want to call it clean. Can you say clean business? You know, something clean, but
Yeah.
but with a good salary.
Office and
Well,
manufacturing, industrial.
ThemeWorks is a very good example of what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
right.
Drop Top Customs, local business
Oh, my goodness,
expands.
yes.
Right.
But he's talking about adding 45 people to his payroll to build out that facility. And, you know, I don't know how much he involved us in that plan, but we're gonna benefit from it. But that's what we need to be looking for.
When we had the last strategic plan meeting, you and I talked about, or we discussed involving the business owners in the discussion. You were going to have workshops with them. I don't know if any of those have happened yet. But I think they could be a really big part of this conversation in terms of what would augment, what would naturally augment what they're already doing. Because Commissioner Ambrose is spot on. ThemeWorks, I mean, the stuff that they do there is just world renowned, and it's incredibly cool to see when they're loading up big stuff to go to Universal or Epcot or wherever. That's a real niche market. Air Liquide, very unique market, what they do there. So I would beg to ask them how they feel that the business community could grow in tandem with what they're already doing.
Yes, we will definitely go to them. The reason we haven't is because we've been working on budget.
No, I understand, but
But honestly, before this is done, we'll go to them because we really need the input because the businesses don't show up to our community meetings.
well,
a lot
Christy's
'cause-
here, but she's only, you know, there's a lot, there's a lot else out there. So
Yeah, so definitely, and I think we want to do like niches, maybe a day of more focus groups, because we're more likely to get them during the daytime. So a niche of industrial, some office, some downtown, so
Yeah, and,
we'll look at those set up.
and that's something we need to think about as we're moving forward too, is like 441 has a mixed bag of industrial and commercial, and they're 2 totally different things. Main Street has that mixed bag as well. So if we want to look at some of that industrial growth, i.e. like ThemeWorks or Air Liquide or like the pipe plant per se, where would we want to put that to where it's not taken away from that downtown area?
441.
And then as we're looking at that 441 corridor with the amount of commercial that's coming down there, let's be honest with ourselves. Look at the Alachua 441 corridor right now. What is happening? It is coming this way. So how do we want to address that coming this way? Because they're running out of property there. It's going to come into our city limits.
That's why we get to have a plan in place of what we actually want to see out there. And that's going to be very important as a business standpoint. It's all how we market ourselves, what we want to see in High Springs. That's where we got to come up with the plan to market ourselves, to sell ourselves to people that come in the High Springs with some, I hate to say clean business, but clean businesses.
Right,
And-
and commercial can be, I don't want to say prettier, but commercial could be more appealing coming into town versus industrial. I mean,
Industrial, yeah.
15 pipe plants coming down 441.
No, you don't want
That's
that.
not going to look real appealing coming in, but if you do some cleaner commercial coming in, to where you can maintain some of that field coming in, versus, you know, we want to attract some of this industrial stuff, but where do we want to put it if we want to go that way? What part of town? We have one little industrial park off of 340 right now, off 182nd. There's that little stretch right there on South Main. You got ThemeWorks and all that. And we got a little patch on 441 right there from the mini storages down from 202 Street. How do we want to define that while we're looking at this?
Yes.
How do we want the zoning to look? How do we want these things to go forward? You know, so I would challenge all y'all to kind of think about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if we're coming into High Springs from 441 coming in from Alachua, how do you want it to look?
So, for instance, we have the highway enhancement zone, and that, along with everything else, needs to be rewritten. but it needs to be stronger because it doesn't really give the true visioning of what we want. So a lot of times what you'll do is sometimes you do things that are prescriptive, and other times you do guidelines that are descriptive. So you want to do a combination of, here's the descriptive guidelines, this is what we want, okay? This is what prescriptive, this is what we make you do, but this is what we want, because you don't want to make people do too much that then they can't come in, right? But a lot of times if you throw the vision out there, people will get excited and grab onto it. So it's kind of like you have the part coming into town that is one look and feel, and then as you go closer like to the Canoe Outpost, then you kind of see where almost like a little 50s themes picks up. And so do you want to, you can write some design guidelines so that you add some character to the corridor. But, how important would that be to you? Is it supposed to be something you're interested in doing, or is it something you're not interested in doing?
I have interest in doing that, but I wonder if, in order to make this a more constructive conversation, would it be possible for us to get a map, maybe 11 by 17, because you know I like them bigger, with the city limits on there, and then have a couple different layers on there, like street names, so we know where we are, and current zoning?
Yeah, I think what we should do.
I don't have that in my house. Yeah. Yeah. So long as
we can print ones this big, and then put them on little easels all over the room, and then we can, have part sections, and you come up to like a little charrette, like here's a section of this part of our town, what do you want it to look like? Here's a section of this town, what is your visioning for that? And go around the room, and then from there, then make a plan going forward. We would need assistance because we haven't gotten too far in the LDC because we're so busy, so we would need some outside assistance, not to get the initial vision, but in rewriting all of this, we will because it takes a lot, but it can be done, so I think that'd be a good idea.
I'm having deja vu, and at least two commissioners here we're going to remember when we had a city planner, Christian Popoli. And I'm going to say we'll go back about 15, 16 years ago, where a lot of these issues were being brought forward. And his recommendation was we do that, but that we create in our LDRs and everything, things that make it not easy for a box house to come in, if at all, along the 441 corridor. That we create different requirements that highlight what we want in our downtown, what we want around the motels, what we want in areas that are going to be built but aren't built out. And there was a number of citizen boards, one of them was a historic preservation board that was combined that had businesses and residents, and they came up with a big list of things. And ultimately the commission decided, and I'll use some quotes, people who come to High Springs love High Springs, and they'll always do the right thing. We don't need to put rules in place that make it hard to do business in the city of High Springs. And all of that planning got shot down. And so now we're back at this point, and it's like, you can come up with the ideas, but unless there's consensus that there's a will up here to actually regulate them and say, yes, we would like something that's a 50s, 60s theme in this section of 441 to blend with the hotels that are there. We'd like something that fits with a 1925 to 50 period in the downtown area. That would include the fonts on your signage and the color and all of that. If we're willing to do that, it would really make a difference as we are challenged with the people to try and meet needs of people who are living here and the needs of people who want to move here and start a business.
Well, that's why our CVS looks the way it does. That's why our CVS looks the way it does, is because that foundation was starting.
The current board, the current Palms Medical.
Yeah.
Most people would look at that, sorry, Kevin. Most people would look at that and think those buildings have always been there. Those were empty lots. That was infill construction where Palms Medical is, and so they could do a real estate office. And our city planner said this is how it should look. It should fit, it should blend with the neighboring buildings. And if you're gonna do this, you won't always be here. It needs to be easily repurposed if you do. And sure enough, and the same thing would happen with our CVS. If they decided to move to a corner lot, which they prefer, that building could easily be repurposed. It does not look like a pink box that other communities have. And that's good planning.
Right.
But it meant a greater ask. And, you know, at the time, we were able to make those requests and get them done. So,
One other comment I had about entertainment is if we think about the people that are coming in, they're coming in for the weekend, they're camping, they're doing their thing. They come into downtown to eat. They don't really have much of anything else to do while they're here. The Priest Theater is something else that kind of comes into this conversation. If you have a movie theater where they can go to the movies, you know, you've got the putt-putt golf over behind the diner. And one thing that Bahram had been talking about was putting in a go-kart track. But where it was not ideal, and, you know, neighbors didn't want it. I get that. But I think something like that that would bring in things that would be fun for families would also be a plus for us.
Some more family entertainment for staff to identify those categories and what could fit at different places.
Yeah, I mean, if they're coming in to spend their money to eat, that's great for the restaurants, but if we had other stuff for them to do as well, especially in the evenings, you know, like disc golf and outdoor stuff is maybe a little bit limited at night, but go-karts would be just an idea.
There was some discussion on that initially, and there was some misinformation. So the idea with the go-karts after the initial discussions was they were going to be electric. And then there was some things that were going into play, but I don't know where that idea is with Bahram right now. So we haven't heard anything else since the initial conceptual conversation we had.
That'd be a pretty unique, though, solution.
I thought it was innovative. Just the idea of the thought
And you don't have the
process he
noise
had.
pollution and all the other, and it would still be fun. That's kind of a cool idea.
I'm a bumper boat kind of girl. I'm joking.
Well, what Nancy also said about stand-up paddle boards.
I particularly like this idea. I think this idea is really good. This family entertainment idea is one that you guys should be growing on, because what Catherine just said is absolutely right. You've got a group of people here. These guys it's a captive audience. Give them something to do, they will spend their money, and when they spend their money, you guys will get tax revenue. So, real quick, family activity ideas, obstacle courses, bowling, a bowling alley, that's a thought. And it fits your 50s retro theme. Mini golf, you've already got that. Go for ice cream, looks like we've already got that too. But those are all kind of options out there.
pickleball and disc golf. Pickleball and disc golf, they're huge.
Well,
Pickleball is really big right now.
Elliot is already started on the pickleball redoing, because people are playing on our courts anyway. So he's getting them resurfaced. The ones that they're not playing the tennis as much. They're playing pickleball, so we're getting them resurfaced. That's one of the first things he brought. So 100% behind. I think the key is identifying the family entertainment that will come to the smaller markets. You know, a lot of the it's there. It's just a little harder to look for to find, and then tell our story. Get the retail, get the demographics, so we can tell our story.
Sport is very popular in Colorado. I don't know how it will take here, but the rock climbing.
Oh,
When
yes.
the kids climb up, it's extremely popular out there.
It's really popular in so many places now. A lot of people are doing it. And it goes with our kind of theme, outdoors theme. Okay, moving on. This went back to the age group thing. Are we adequately serving the different sectors within our city? So two things, one location and one age group. So we talked a little bit about age group. If anyone wants to add on to that now, we're serving all the different ages across the lifespan. are we serving all the sectors within our city? Are there any parts of our cities that, you know, do we have a bunch of stuff over here, but not enough over here? Or any comments about if we're out of, is there any areas where it's easier to get to and it's harder for other areas to get the places they need to go? What are the thoughts on how we're serving the different sectors of our community? Or in the needs in different sectors are going to be different as well. So, because sometimes we can think of the whole city, but sometimes we have to drill down because every parts of our city are different. Just like our commercial corridors, so are our neighborhoods. So, are there any needs within neighborhoods or sectors that we're not meeting? You know, it could even be like some of the bigger, you know, homes with the bigger lots. You know, do they need things that we don't even know about out there so that they're safe when they're walking from house to house? That they might not have sidewalks or, you know, just different things.
So when you're talking about sectors, you mean basically geographical sectors. It'd be great if everybody had sidewalks, but they're expensive.
They're also expensive to maintain.
Right. Right. I mean, I would piggyback on what Mayor James said about needing more stuff for the elderly population here. But I also think after hearing Commissioner Grunder's wife speak, there's also a great need for the teens. Like Commissioner Ambrose said, we've got a lot of team sports, and those are usually the younger kids. But then when the kids get to 15, 16, 17, they're not doing that so much anymore because they're doing that at school. And I remember when we first moved here, there were dances on the weekends in one of the antique stores, current antique stores. People would go dance on Friday and Saturday nights. And if we had things like, whatever, I don't know what kids do, line dancing or, I don't know, Amy might be able to tell us more. But I think some programming for that specific, for the kids that are not over involved in sports and over involved in, stretched and everywhere else, they're falling through the cracks. Yeah, and I think if we could focus on that particular age group as well, with input from Commissioner Grunder's wife, other guidance counselors at Santa Fe, maybe some guidance counselor from the middle school age group, we might be able to come up with some ideas for that kind of, I think, lost age group where we don't have stuff.
Well, and when you pick up on it, even the seniors and the teens. We were looking the other day, they have parks now just for seniors. And like everything's wider, and then they have, more things that you can stop along the way, more benches, more exercise things just aimed at seniors, kind of a little more peaceful where you don't have, all the kids around you. And a lot of the teen stuff is actually leading towards some of the esports, which is pretty cool. They have some outdoor esports type of things where there's like video screens and you follow what the video screens tell you to do outside, and they're getting even like the different exercise things, they're getting really, really popular. So, and like skate parks even are a big one too. And even skate parks, not just even one giant big one, people have little neighborhood skate parks now, smaller ones. So.
In our long-term planning, would it be possible to target maybe the Santa Fe Canoe Outpost as a senior area? Could that be?
That would be hard from an ADA point.
Would it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be really hard. Because if you look at the lay of the land, everything especially, that'd be hard. But, Bruce has already looked into this or knows about it. I'm sure y'all that have been up here forever. One of the things on the strategic plan that came out was finishing the old school. Don't know how much that would cost. Don't know what's out there for that. I heard here has been looked into. The multi-purpose center, and the programming definitely needs to be looked at, and some community input for Catherine Taylor. Get some community input on that. I know there was before you did the center, but there needs to be more now. So,
I don't know that we serve any one group adequately. I think we touch a lot of different areas and do a lot of different things, but I don't know that we actually do any of them adequately. No faults of anybody, it's just what we currently have. Our park system's kind of all over the place. We got fields here, fields here, fields there, fields here, and we're trying to to offer a lot with limited staff. We're trying to offer a lot with limited resources. And I don't know that we've really identified ourselves throughout the years as being great at any one thing. And, you know, I've been with the city almost 27 years at this point, and every year we hear we need to do something with seniors. Every year we hear we need to do something with teens. And I don't know that we've actually ever really addressed it other than saying, hey, we need to do something. I mean, I don't know that a multi-purpose center fixes all that. That's a start. There's some layout of some parks that need to be addressed over the next couple of years, and how do we want it to look? The Parks Master Plan will address that. But on top of that, from looking on the inside of what we're doing, what on the outside do we want to attract? And if bowling alley, let's use that for example, where would you want to put a bowling alley if we were to pursue that? Where in your mind, where would you envision that to go? I mean, is that going to be a 441 corridor thing? Is that going to be, you know, a 27 thing? Where do we want to see that go? How do we want to address that? You know, do you want to see laser tag, skating rink, ice skating? There's no ice skating in the area. Are these things that we need to look at? You know, not so much from ourselves, but as we're targeting things to come into the area for economic growth, and we're looking at things for people to do, what is the vision?
Come to teens. I'm trying to be nice here. What we did as a team, teens are not doing it today. That we need to stop thinking that way. Point blank, period. They're not going outside to throw no horseshoes or all that type of stuff. You got to think technical. That's the only. This is what they know these days. Technology. That's where it's at. And for us to sit here and say what teens need, we don't have a clue. We do not have a clue. I would love for my grandchildren to go outside and play sometime, but not so. They're just in the house and play with all the technology we spend our money on. So we must start planning for the future, not what happened in the past or what's happening in the present. We got to start thinking for the future, and all we're going to think about what for the future, we got to get our young people in here to tell us what they think and what they want. Point blank, period. We got to start reaching out to them.
Mayor's Youth Council, that's on the agenda.
Yeah. That's on the. So what age group you put on the council?
Mayor's Youth Council says 8th grade through 12th grade.
7th through 12th.
Okay.
Oh, 7th through 12th?
That's
I
cool.
think the ordinance says 8th. We don't use it.
Oh, does it say 8th through
Yeah.
12th? Okay.
That's cool. So what about you 20 years old? You're 30 years old? We need to start talking to them. Because I'm telling you, they don't think like seniors think. So that's why we need to start focusing more on that group. Not just the teenagers, but those 20 years old, those 30 years old, those 40 years old. I ain't going to say 50 because they could pretty much be seniors too. But we need to start focusing. And that's right, Antoine, and Bruce, Elliot.
All right now. All right.
But I'll be there too, Alan. I'll be leading the group. But seriously, we really need to start talking to young people, getting their idea, what they want to see for their children. What would like to see for their children to have different activities. I'm telling you, it just don't work what we did. It just building I can see you trying to build a dance hall. Who gonna show up?
I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a horrible idea. A dance hall would be an absolute terrible.
They ain't gonna do it. Yeah.
Well,
No, you're gonna have shootings and problems.
Yeah,
and all that.
in our days it would have been a good idea. I can see the gym now at what you call the sock hop. Something they used to call it. 'Cause we used to take the shoes off to go inside to dance because they didn't want to about on the gym floor. So, but them days are gone.
Okay, I must be old then.
Huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're 100% right. Teens now, they don't do anything. They don't even do things that they did when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, the things are just
I mean,
different now.
the biggest thing I hear from like the 20s and 30s is there's nothing to do downtown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it shuts down.
It shuts
And
down.
they're
You know,
worried that it shuts down
sidewalks
too
roll
early.
up, You know, what are we supposed to do? And then they all end up in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then you start talking to your 40s and 50s, and they like that. So we've got such a huge age difference in our community at this point. We got a lot of, 20-somethings and early 30-somethings, and then we've got that mid-40s to 60s demographic, that there's just a huge disconnect on how they envision seeing town go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, in all honesty, it's like, it's hard because, you talk about a bowling alley, but yet we're talking people want to play video games. Yeah, so it's hard, it's so hard to see where we're going to be 10 to 20 years from now. If you watch the Jetsons growing up, we should be all in flying cars at this point. But, where we're at now versus where we need to be and where we're going, we just need to have that thought process. The 15-year plan on the wall over there with future land use, and if you look at it, hasn't changed much. And half those enclaves are up there still too, if not all of them. So there's a lot of things internally we need to do, but as we start getting down the road, back to what you said, what do we want to target for the future audience? And how do we want to get there?
Yeah, back to talking about the appreciator, one thing Janet and I looked at right before we closed, we had some kids coming up playing Xbox on the screen, so that's something maybe you can look at too. If you end up doing that, there's a world out there that'll bring a lot of people to this town to play that live on the screen. It's very possible, our kids did it. And, you could do tournaments, you could do.
Oh, those Madden tournaments they do, they bring in a ton of money. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot of that reaches up from 30 to
Yeah, absolutely.
15 crowd.
Oh, yeah. And even, those things are huge. My son talks about those tournaments and whatnot all the time. He loves them. He jumps in them all the time. I don't understand it.
That's something that ends up
I'm
working
slow.
out, you can look at and bring a lot of the kids something new to do or younger people.
I think one of the things too that we have an opportunity for that we haven't completely taken the opportunity is that I think a lot of people in that age group, 20s, 30s, and 40s, like just the placemaking. They like somewhere to go sit and be near water.
Mm-hmm.
They like somewhere where you have the water shooting out of the ground, their kids are running around, they're sitting there just communing with their friends, somewhere to get out of the house and just commune. It's not necessarily always inside in a restaurant. They like the outdoor spaces.
Oh, a splash pad would be
Yeah.
incredibly utilized here.
Oh, they're
I mean,
staff hates them because they're so much work, but the community loves them.
The community
because
would love it.
the community can't ever wait for the grand opening of the splash pad.
yeah, half of our people already go to
Yeah.
Alachua all the time.
Like you can't.
Which has been closed because they can't
Yeah.
get parts.
Like, there's a way
We'll have
to
the fire
do
department out there
splash
shooting all the
pads,
kids with
and there's
hoses.
a
Would
way
we
not
do
to
it now?
Splash pads. There's a couple
Yeah.
different ways.
I mean-
that you cannot go through all the pain.
I mean, a splash pad is as much work as a pool. I mean, in all
Yeah.
honesty,
Oh, yeah.
without the lifeguards. I mean,
His head's about to fall off.
between Elliot's over there
Okay,
too.
I built one, and it was the worst thing I ever did.
Yeah, but you gotta do it the right way. If you hire, I know they're costly, but if you get it from a quality company, if you get it from the right company, you don't go the cheap route.
I got from people that did Disney World.
I just
You can't
saying,
just hook a
there's
water hose up?
companies
Man,
that,
come on, what are
that
we
you,
doing?
you buy it from, they have their warranty, they maintain it. I'm just saying, we've done them in communities I've worked in too, and there's ones that do it wrong.
You're gonna have to have, and to make sure the quality of water, it's a lot to it.
And it is, and then you have to repaint it, and then you have to, there's probably the number one thing as far as what's to it, but it's also one of the most popular things.
Yeah.
So,
It would go over well.
you get what you work for. The kids love it.
It's like everything with Parks and Recs, it's maintenance.
The maintenance.
Once you build it, it's all maintenance.
You don't go low bid on the splash pad. You just don't,
Yeah.
because it'll end up costing you more.
I had a sprinkler and I hurt myself tripping on the hose, you know?
No, what he's talking about is the homeless.
Oh.
Fast, you know,
I still get bored of it.
it's so bad.
I've never
I'll
seen
retire.
I've never dealt with that.
If I have to deal with it, I'll retire.
I think it's because they come to warm climate. I think it's because it's
talk about family. It's a place where people can go and have a good time with their kids. They don't have to go to Gainesville.
I agree.
I've just never seen a community that's not successful. It's always been a pain for staff, but it's always, people love them, so. But, okay, so,
I think you need to look at spaces that are multi-generational. I think the idea of, oh, well, this is for the 20s crowd, oh, well, this is just for the teens, oh, well, this is just for the seniors. Look at stuff that is multi-generational, stuff that serves multiple people that can be used in different ways. That doesn't mean that, oh, Wednesday night senior night, it just means this is a place that is acceptable for somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s to go have lunch or dinner at 5 o'clock, and then at 10 o'clock, it's still a good place for a 20-year-old to be, a 30-year-old to be.
yeah, I've seen things that it's kids up till a certain time, and then past that time, it becomes somewhere for adults, or the in-between time for both, so. And a lot of, so I know we have the library district, and we have our library, but there's a lot of libraries nowadays that don't look like libraries, so communities that, you know, say we already have a library, but the other things that normally go into, that they do in libraries, such as, in one of the communities I worked for, the whole second story of the library was all programming. No books, no videos, no games, it was just all programming, but it's not the Parks and Recreation programming, it's more the literacy program, robotics, you know, building, I don't know, just so many different things. They might be teaching something that they might have the ping pong, or they teaching something about space or aeronautics. Like, it kind of has that other type of stuff, and so somewhere for that too, or we could add that into our programming. So, okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Oh, how do you feel about the overall safety of the community?
I can tell you
Do you
from,
feel like there's a good community?
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you from
Oh, yeah.
being in the profession, High Springs has got it together, and that is a direct correlation for the chief and what he's put into place. This is probably the safest town in Alachua County. I would say that very comfortably.
Yes.
I'm still shocked at the monthly statistics that your department puts out, chief. It's like people don't understand how busy our small department is.
What about information? How do y'all feel about the distribution of information? Are we getting the word out on things going on, or do we need to do better, or do you like our, okay, so specifically, what do you think, as far as what, is there other type of social media we need to be on, more print, more getting it out sooner? What are your thoughts on that?
Pretty much talk a minute about High Springs. There is an issue with that. People, there's a man who hangs around the chamber, sleeps on the picnic tables, really does not take care of himself. He's people, even from the restaurant across the street, they want to come and sit down at the table, and they can't. Nobody can come and sit there. They go and sit in the pavilion or the gazebo. And there's a lot of complaints about that. And of course, there's nothing the chamber can do about it. But there are a lot of people who complain, and people coming to the table. In fact, as I understand it, one couple said that you really need to take down your sign, the welcoming sign, because it provides this, and this, and it really doesn't. You can't go down there and sit and enjoy a lunch or anything like that. It's very disconcerting.
Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, there is an increase homeless, and they actually are hidden around us. They have different camps right in the woods, so we just corresponded with codes and trying to target that, provide resources, and work with problems. We have one over by Kangaroo that we just identified, and we're removing those items. And sometimes they have mental illness, and sometimes they have criminal elements. But yeah, there is an increase. I would say there's at least about 10 And so we just started to try to target that. Just the other day, we just talked about it, so it's kind of unique you just said that.
Okay, because it's been going on a long time.
Absolutely.
And
And they're hidden. They're,
no,
they're,
this guy's right.
well, you're talking about an individual person, but I'm telling you that there are many, and there are many close to your neighborhood. There's even one there near Memorial Park. So they're hidden. They're hidden in the woods, and sometimes we don't see them until we find out. But I think there's about a population of 10, and we have some along Railroad Avenue. But we plan on tackling that in the next couple weeks, getting on our UTV and going out in the woods and identifying them and trying to work with the property owners to say, hey, you got to remove these folks off your property. So that's coming in the next couple weeks.
Chief, can I ask you a question about that? How do we have an ordinance already in place, or is that currently illegal? If it's on public property, if somebody is on public property, you're talking about private property too, and that's obviously a different issue, but.
Yeah, we're talking on public, other than, a person has the right to be in public view, unless it's in our parks where there's restricted areas. Now I think it's a little, where someone's staying overnight, staying on a bench, we can kind of proceed with kind of pushing them along, asking them they gotta leave. You can't just take refuge on the bench that's meant for the public. Kind of what we dealt with right next door with the gentleman there. We eventually say, hey, you can't, this is a part of a park and city. You can't stay here overnight and put all your stuff there.
Right.
So when it becomes that, but if a person wants to, walk around or be, sit there, there's not a lot we can do in that aspect.
And I know that your resources obviously are limited and you can't, you've got a lot of other stuff to do, but do we have any way to, because I know that Pastor Sammy has tried to help the individual, I think that Linda's talking about, and he just didn't want it. And, that's the reality of a lot of folks that are homeless, is that that's just their choice, and I understand that.
I'm familiar with that person, and they actually came from Gainesville years ago, back when I was on the show.
Oh, wow.
So when they find High Springs, I hate to say this, when they find High Springs, it's a good thing, so they tend to stay here.
Right.
They don't want to be in Gainesville where they got to fight with other homeless folks.
Right.
So when they find this spot, it's a honey hole for them.
It's a tricky, and I mean, I know that, you can try to help provide them housing. You can, hook them up with St. Francis House or other resources that are there, but if they don't want it, we can't force it on them, and it's, you've got to be respectful, but you want to help.
And that's why it's part of our plan is that we want to identify them where they're at, just in case anything bad happens to them. At least we can know who they are and maybe some contact. We'll try to provide them with resources. With
Right.
Option is working with those property owners, saying, hey, all this trash and stuff like that is code violations. You got to get rid of it, and you can't have folks living in tents on your property. So
Okay.
we'll be pushing them off where they go.
Thank you.
Our new codes compliance officer has started this week, and I think when y'all meet him, I'll have him come to a future commission meeting. I think y'all be really like him. I think he's going to do a great job.
I met him. I just ran into him in Allen in the lobby. He seemed lovely.
Yeah, I think you're really gonna
I met him this morning as well.
Yeah. So on the communication, what are the additional things that you would like us to do to improve? Just more outlets sooner, just give more information about what's going on when we put it out? Is there anything in particular?
High Springs Alerts is really, really well received. I've got people who live in Alachua. They make sure they sign up to get High Springs Alerts because we're on any kind of traffic issue before anybody else is. So I get really great feedback about that.
Okay, moving on. Do you feel the city has adequate facilities to serve the community? I kind of knew the answer to this, but I just want to dig deeper. So as far as so number one, the facility plan is like 90% complete, so that'll be coming to you soon. I think you're gonna like it. You'll have changes to it, obviously, but it's definitely a great starting point. But as far as facilities are concerned, obviously police, the public works building, as we've been discussed forever. are on top. But what are your thoughts on city facilities in general? Where do you see the most need? Obviously, we can talk about police and public works, but even outside of those two areas.
We have got to get adequate space for staff to have offices to where they can do their jobs efficiently and not being stuck in conference rooms. And, you know, a lot of the buildings they're just outdated. You know, we got to start making a plan and getting serious about what that looks like and how we're going to pay for it, because that's got to be priority number one. I mean, no offense to anybody, but City Hall was ugly when they built it. You know, I mean, kind of is what it is. But we also need an indoor facility for basketball, volleyball, and maybe some other sports for the kids, because we used to use the school, but, you know, as everything else in, you know, the latest times, we're not exactly getting along with them, I guess, right now either. So they're not letting our kids utilize those areas anymore. So, you know, we've got to have a spot for that, because I don't want to keep going to I don't want to farm off of all these other towns so we have to leave constantly to go do things in other towns. That's, you know, that's completely against what we've talked about the whole time. So, you know, we've got to start putting that into play as well.
It takes away from community. And
Absolutely.
It's harder on parents, and it also takes away from economic development. Like,
Yeah.
bing, bing, bing. So that, obviously, no surprise, that's coming out. That's coming out number one.
Hello.
On, you can answer it. Yeah. It's coming out number one of the number one things in Parks Master Plan. Y'all identified it as one of the number one things. Like, it's like, definitely, we will be discussing that this year and making a plan.
And I think we're lucky for the new hire, and I'm glad to see him here, because Alachua was kind of taken over from what High Springs, when I was coming up, was the premier place to play, you know, baseball, softball, basketball. It was like the premier spot, and we would compete against Alachua. And now everything's had to merge with Alachua, because we just don't have the facilities, or we don't have the buy-in, or I'm not sure what it is. So I'm glad to see that Alachua's really stepped their game up. So I'm glad to see that that's been brought to us in order for some new, fresh ideas. So I'm very glad to see that we hired you.
Even little things, like it forces parents to have to eat in Alachua. They can't even go home and make sandwiches for their kids. I know that's a little thing, but it's a little big thing, you know? It's,
Yeah,
it makes
I-
sports more expensive for parents. I mean,
Absolutely.
It has a lot of spillover effects.
As we look at facilities, you know, we're going to have a shift that, because what we've done is we've always made do. And staff have taken a lot of sacrifices because they were trying to help the community out and not cost the city money and the tax base. But really, it's an investment in the community. And so, you know, we need to go ahead and bite the bullet to have facilities the city and community can grow into. And it's just time, and we're losing efficiencies in terms of, ultimately, we are here to service. And by having everything scattered, there's just a lot of wasted time in a lot of different areas, or you're paying multiple utility bills and maintaining multiple HVAC units and, you know, roofs and doors and windows. And maybe it's time to, as we look at that, and just mentally know, yeah, we're gonna take a hit, but 10 years from now, we will have been so visionary that they'll just have to put big statues up.
I think one of the comments during the facilities plan was, say, even if we can't afford to do everything we want, once you put in the structure, you put in the plumbing, you know, electricity, all of that, then even just build up a story and don't finish it out. If you can't, don't finish, but at least you've built up a story, a shell. I mean, while it's cheaper to do so, because that's planning for the future too. Because if you look at the needs for the next 10 or 20 years, we really can't afford possibly to get there. We might be able to, but it's really tight. But there's different things you can do, you know. So we're trying to bring you all those options when we come forward, but I totally agree. It costs a lot to run for well, Diane can speak to that. The utility bills are really hitting us this year, like in a big way, so that's one. And insurance with all the facilities too. You're right. So is there other facilities you would really like us to focus on? Police, public works, planning for the future. One of the things that have been coming up on the facilities plan, too, that has been discussed is that when you make a nice municipal complex, it really kind of is a catalyst for all of downtown. What you see is more people coming to use it, and then it's spilling over, more people going to the businesses, and just it's a catalyst. A lot of times when you see a mixed-use development, they'll pick their catalyst projects, and most of the times they'll try to grab a city project. They'll try to get y'all to do a city hall or a multi-purpose center. They'll try to get something that's a city project in it because of that. So, okay. Any discussions on facilities? All right, next one. How do you feel about the city's infrastructure? Water, sewer, streets? I mean, I know it's coming on the streets, but you know, we need to have the discussion. What parts, you know, if we were to pave the next street, we do have the inventory that's been worked on, but what are the sections of town that you would like us to look at that maybe we haven't focused on yet, or weren't in the plan where you wanted it to be, or do you want us to do more repairs, or there's areas where there's grass streets, like it's platted as a street, but there's no street water or sewer there. And there's people at lots who want to build on those lots, and we say no because you have to have a street, right? Just like, and you have to have water and sewer. Those could be, as we're running out of CDBG projects, but those could be some projects that could apply for that could be future CDBG projects in certain areas because they don't have water sewer.
We need to look at ways to open up
Yeah.
a lot of the side streets that either aren't open or are really strong candidates to handle more than completely local traffic. We just have to. We can't keep everything going through the intersection of downtown, and that's going to change the flow, but there are opportunities, and I think staff need to really look at what those opportunities are. And, you know, I mean, I live in a dead end. I'd love it to stay a dead end, but, you know, realistically, they should go ahead and get opened up and connected because that would help the flow of traffic. Just would.
So have you identified those? Y'all identified those type of streets where no streets and water?
Yeah, so we've identified some through the Sierra expansion, and then we've started, kind of made us look at other ones. And then Vice Mayor Ambrose, he has some that he's identified as well. We need to dig into it further because it's kind of shown us we need to look at it from a wider perspective. Christy and I were doing the comp plan. We tried to identify some, and then we pushed some of it to Kimley Horn to help verify. I think the job they did was okay, but I still think it can be better. Identifying this, I think it's worth the exercise. Making those identifications across the whole city and prioritizing them. We don't have a document that prioritizes those, so that would be project ready. Like, this is the one we want engineered, so I think that's worth the time.
I think we could also go with our water facilities master plan and wastewater plan that we've already looked at and identify areas. I mean, those are, I mean, it's spelled out pretty clearly for us. You know, where we have old water pipes, they need to be upgraded. We shouldn't have any transite in the ground anymore. I didn't realize we didn't have wastewater going up 441 until Mr. Gay told me that he was putting in septic. I'm like, what do you mean septic? Well, there's no wastewater lines there. I didn't know that. So, I mean, expanding all of that so that we have wastewater within all of the city limits, I think is a good idea, as well as water, obviously. And, you know, upgrading the infrastructure. That's still, I know we've done a lot of that over the years already, but I think that needs to also be a focus because there are still issues with the water that people, you know, they talk about a lot. And it certainly doesn't have to do with our source water. You know, we've got beautiful water, but it's most likely just an infrastructure issue.
Railroad Avenue, am I correct, Bruce? The sewer line. Don't run down Railroad Avenue, but it's not on 441.
On Railroad all the way to Oak Ridge.
Yeah, and that's the area we really need to start focusing on putting infrastructure on 441, because as you say, that's probably going to be where your growth coming. We don't know, but
One on the south side of the road going towards Alachua, and then it stops on the north side of the road, right around the Methodist church. So there's nothing on that.
so it stops at the Methodist Church, no go no.
Yeah, the water does.
Yeah, you see the fire hydrants where they end. Well, and again, we're a little deja vu here, because the commission had a plan that was brought by city staff to put in a lift station that was down by what's now Boone, and the sewer to go across 441, and a grant to then go down 441 so that we'd have infrastructure there to help facilitate the development that we knew was going to come. And the decision was to not spend the money out of impact fees.
That was, and part of that was that grant funding from the original sewer plant project back then. Some key things to keep in mind: the lead and copper with AMI coming in over the next few months will be key. There's been some new areas on the lead and copper studies that they want to focus on. There's some areas that they've omitted, so any areas that there's lead couplers are not eligible for any grant funding. The crook necks and a couple other things will not. So there are some moving targets on that we're looking at this time. I have a meeting with Mid-Tower. It's like the first week of August. One is a tail end to the CDBG discussions we were having about trying to identify some more eligible projects in different areas to see what we can do with that. But we're also going to be discussing what areas are left of transite pipe and look at trying to get those on a list as well. And then once we get through that transite pipe list or get it identified, then we'll start looking at ductile iron and a few other areas that may be of concern. So just to let you know, I mean, like this project we just did on the CBG here with the water lines, we omitted a whole part of 441 or 27 that was ductile iron due to funding. So we know that exists. So there's some areas we're running through right now.
So it's we're putting the Palm Garden. Is that on sewer? That old church there?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look. It should be because of where that water line or that sewer line runs.
Yeah, because they ran it down to
Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge.
Yeah, they should be, but let me verify that.
Yeah. If you don't have infrastructure, business is not coming. It's just.
We've lost some because of not having it on 441. We've lost some shopping centers.
Yeah.
So.
We've lost some stuff just because of internet connectivity.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's another one that we're having, private business try to tackle. Windstream's doing a bunch of upgrades. Last I heard from Cox, they finally got the final pedestal they were waiting in for the tie-ins here. So there's a lot of just internet infrastructure that's coming into play.
And you're gonna need that. That's the world we live in today.
It is, and we talk about office space and things like that. Office space is not what it used to be. A lot of people are opening off. A lot of businesses are doing a lot of remote stuff now.
Yes.
So you're getting a lot of remote business. I mean, you've got companies out of California. There's people that work here that are working at companies that are based out of California. So those type call centers are starting to go away.
Okay. Anything else on infrastructure? Okay. Next one. What would you like High Springs to look like in 10 years?
Still like High Springs.
Could you make it cooler?
Actually, you can. There was one development that I worked on in a city, on the city side, and they brought down the degrees 7 degrees above the rest of the city for all the environmental.
Trees will do that.
Yeah, the trees, putting the trees in the right place and everything. And then they did some other things as well.
So then the tree ordinance could actually be a part of, I mean, in a serious discussion, that could actually be something that is good from, from that perspective.
Yeah.
Keeping the canopy, keeping the green
Yeah,
makes a big difference.
especially with the climate change and everything.
And more grass.
Mm-hmm.
Asphalt makes a difference. That's a good
So-
question. 10 years from now.
Well, anyone can always email me with any other thoughts.
I'd like the city to look like we planned for it. That we're not dealing with pinch points. Like right now, we have a ton of pinch points all over the city. And, okay, we didn't use a crystal ball, and so we've got these pinch points. I'd like 10 years from now that people don't look back and go, if they'd done this 5 years ago, or they'd done this 10 years ago, or even if they'd started this project 3 years ago. Because here we are talking about trees and heat, and I can tell you, when I was on the Parks Board, and you two would remember this, I'd stand up here and say, there's no money in the budget to plant trees. The only tree money in our tree city was to remove dead trees. And I think there needs to be money in the budget to plant trees. And we never had money in the budget to plant trees. But now we're talking about it. And it's like, and the saying was, the best time to plant a centennial tree is 100 years ago. I mean, you got it, and we were really blessed to have the county forester come in and not only plant a lot of trees, but for the next 6 months, water them on a regular
We
basis.
also do like an annual Arbor Days, and so say we don't have a ton of money to put. I mean, do we have any money, Diane, for trees?
We have no money for it.
But I'm joking.
We've done.
No, I'm not being negative.
Yeah, I mean, as a tree city, we're supposed to have, there are actually 2 Arbor Days. And traditionally, we have planted trees. That little maple tree or oak tree that's in front of the old school was one of the last trees that was planted, and I think we missed a year, at least. But, one tree here or there don't make it, because actually that one tree that was planted there that we did as a city replaced 2 that finally died and fell over.
Well, think if we had all the nonprofits, each nonprofit come to an Arbor Days, and each one does 5 trees. And then we do 5 trees. And we do that every single year for 10 years.
You can always open it up to the community.
Yeah.
Dedication trees.
Yeah. That's just kind of how I'm thinking. There's
Hey,
always like a way, even if we don't have the budget.
We can
figure it out.
identify 200 spots to plant certain types of trees. And then if someone wants to donate a tree in somebody's name, they plant it, put a tag on it, and go for it,
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. We can just get a plan of where we want to. We can start with a plan of where we want to do the trees. We don't have to have a big expensive festival, but we could have start with an Arbor. It doesn't have to be Arbor Days, but I'm just if you have a time that every year you're planting trees, or twice a year, this is our time. Then you don't lose it. It's kind of like so.
Earth Day.
And while we're thinking about of all this and what you want that 10-year look to look like in, that 441 corridor and the downtown corridor, and how you want to do all this, do we want to look at some areas and talk about some conservation property? Do we want to have that conversation, whether it just conservation property for passive parks, walking trails, nothing crazy. I'm not talking about putting playgrounds in. I'm not talking about doing all that, just something passive. Is that something we want to put into that 10-year role?
Well, and we can
Something
go
tie
to-
into walking trails, things along those lines.
And we can go to the Conservation Trust, and they were more than happy to work with us. So, okay, I think this is are there any other comments that anyone would like to put in at this point? Any questions I haven't asked you, Kate, or something I really want to talk about this? Okay, I thought if we have time, if y'all are up for it, a quick SWOT analysis. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What are the strengths? What are our weaknesses? Do you want to go through that? Are y'all kind of tired, or do you want to go through
I
that?
had a short presentation
So is it something you're giving Kevin, or just putting it,
I
or do you
can
want
give
to
it to
come
Kevin.
talk at the podium?
I've got copies for all of you.
Okay, why don't you talk at the podium for it? Is that okay? Because
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah, super easy.
I'll go sit down for a second.
Yeah, you can get off your feet, and I have a
Sit down over here.
I have a quick zip drive. We'll see if we can. Look at you. You're like, no, I'm taking that. It's the only thing on it. Oh, here. She probably needs one. And then whoever else. There's one more cup. There you go. So I wanted to speak really quickly about the Priest Theater. I watched last week's commission meeting, and boy, did you guys have a handful. So I wanted to address it and its renovation. I believe the citizens have spoken very clearly that saving the Priest is extremely important to them. I think the Priest makes emotional sense, as I have heard many of you speak about, but it also makes economic sense, as we discussed tonight, about providing places for people to be. Movie theaters are one of those places that hit that multi-generational point. However, the Priest Theater becoming a holding of the city government should not be the future of the building, nor the legacy of the theater itself. The community has expressed that the theater should not be a municipal building, and honestly, the city doesn't have a long-standing track record of running a commercial enterprise. And I get it, you shouldn't run a commercial enterprise. None of you are like, oh, hey, I know everything about running a movie theater. Let's do it. City staff isn't versed in it, nor are they going to be. With that in mind, I wanted to share a few thoughts on how to remove the burden from the city and still have the acquisition of the building itself and allow the citizens to see the Priest come back to life. First and foremost, the acquisition of the building and the use of the provided grant means you, the city, have to come up with $250,000. That's a pretty penny when we've said, I believe just a second ago, there's no money for anything. So that's a pretty big hill to climb. Use of CRA funds or general funds require the building to stay in the city's holding for 10 years, which means you guys run operations costs for 10 years, which again is money after money after money. So I don't really see that as a viable option. There are two options for obtaining these funds as I saw them. The first one requires determining a final buyer up front, soliciting that offer now, and requiring that $250,000 in an endowment per their contract. So I understand at some point we had a buyer for the Priest who then backed out because of course the renovations were so large. Understandable, their pockets were not that deep. Knowing that we have money to do those renovations, we could go back to that buyer or solicit another buyer, ask for that $250,000 to start renovations. Those renovations would be done with the buyer. So with the buyer in mind, he would have input as to, hey, you guys are gonna redo all of the seats. Great, can we make them red? Whatever his vision would be, her vision would be for that theater. And then upon renovation completion, it would immediately be sold. Operations and carrying costs would go to that buyer. That is your cleanest, most efficient option, without a doubt. But there is a second option. The second option is the establishment of a citizen trust. The citizens themselves, those of us in this room, those of us at home tonight, maybe watching, probably not, would make donations. In return, they would become part of that trust. Certain levels of donations would receive voting rights in that trust. This would allow citizens to have say on the future of the Priest, something that I think the citizens desperately want. The citizens would fund the $250,000. Renovations could begin. During renovations, now again, you go back, you find a buyer, you sell it to that buyer, and The citizens then have a vested interest in vetting that buyer. The citizens who have given into this trust get to say, hey, we know that you want to come, you want to buy the Priest. What is your vision for that? We get to take a look at them as buyers. We get to look at the prospectus that they have. What does their work look like? What do we think that they can bring to the community? If you go ahead and click over one more, you'll see I've done just really quickly in the PowerPoint presentation that you guys all have what a donor circle might look like in something like this. It's just an idea. These circles could be completely different. The levels could be different, but allowing them to have certain levels and give to them would be kind of is the key point. Additionally, you'll notice there's a final slide for something called a sustainer program. If you guys have to hold on to this building for longer than anticipated while finding a buyer, a sustainer program is going to be the best possible way for you to manage these carrying costs. Carrying costs on a movie theater are going to be extremely high. I am sure somebody, the Alley Goods, can speak to what this would cost to maintain on a continual basis, but it's not going to be cheap. Insurance alone is going to be rather expensive. This would allow you the ability to maintain those carrying costs, maintain operations costs, hire some sort of operations team to actually run it. Parks and Recreation has enough on their plate. I don't think they're going to run a movie theater as well. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, thoughts?
So
Discuss amongst yourselves.
I appreciate the time you've put into this and looked at it, and I totally agree with you. I don't want to run the city to run a commercial enterprise. I know I've been talking to different people in the area. The county just funded the sports center in Celebration Point, but the county has no part of running that through the Sports Commission. They actually contracted that out to a company that does that kind of thing, and they're able to make profit. And
that's what
there's
a sustainer
there's
program.
A whole thing, but they still own the building.
Yeah, that's what a sustainer program would be able to do for you.
Yeah, and because there are a number of restrictions, and I know Ashley's checking this on the appropriations we're receiving about, public funds being used to the benefit of a private entity. So like if you took the public funds and turned around and sold it and totally divested, in a lot of cases, there's a no-no on that. So you'd have to do something like the partnership. The Hippodrome is another example. As a nonprofit organization, the theater that runs that building, they've put more into that facility through the grants they're able to secure by not being a governmental entity than the city of Gainesville put into it to buy the building and stabilize it when it was empty many years ago. So there are models out there to do a lot of the things you're talking about. And I know right now that TDC has a grant with an application deadline of October 1 that's for up to $500,000 for a nonprofit that is not a governmental entity for a cultural or entertainment venue and its infrastructure.
So
is what
if
it's
the
for.
the Citizens Trust then could apply for that?
Yeah, if there were a 501c3, let's say the High Springs Community Theater wanted to form a partnership with the city, and the city wanted to do that, they have the legal entity to do that kind of thing, or the Heart of High Springs, or any 501c3 would have that ability. If that was a model that the commission and the city move forward with, that you're suggesting with the right,
I think
and you
that-
could form a separate one. You could do like you said.
I think the
absolutely.
citizens owning it as a part of, as opposed to another commercial entity or somebody who's already here, somebody who's already established, that again is taking the onus away from the citizens. And I think, as you guys heard kind of last week, the citizens are very invested in the Priest. That is, they speak very highly of it. I personally was sitting somewhere when I started to have this discussion and watched a 19-year-old girl who's probably never got to go see a movie theater, never got to go see a movie there, go, really? Are we going to get it back? I really want to get it back. She's 19, 20 years old. her grandmother was standing in the same room and was like, really? Are we gonna get it back? I really wanna get it back. So I think you hit multi-generations when you talk about the priest. And it's something really near and dear to everybody's heart. I think allowing the citizens to have that kind of input gains you a lot of political capital.
It's definitely going to be one of those things where it's time to put your money where your mouth is from a citizen standpoint.
Absolutely.
When it comes to this, and I like the idea.
Absolutely. I think, speaking to where we were earlier tonight, I think they will put their money where their mouth is. They've been a lot of big talk about it. I think that they'll come through with for you.
I believe it. Yeah, I absolutely think our city will do that. I think our town will do that. I think our people will do that.
So, just food for thought.
I got a question for you, if you don't mind. First of all, thank you. This
I'll
is
see what I can
amazing.
do for you.
This
I
is
may
amazing.
not have an answer.
I like option one because it does take the city out of it, but
It
I
does.
understand having a backup plan is a good idea. If we established a citizens trust, who would manage that trust?
So inside my inside the PowerPoint, I think that you guys have, you would need to establish a lead trustee, so somebody who actually was able to kind of take the voting record of the people who are in the trust and be able to speak on behalf of the trust. I think that the Alley Goods are your best option for that. They have a vested interest in what that movie theater
Do you
looks
even want
like.
that? Do you even want that? You want to go back into the movie business?
No.
Oh, not in the
into
business.
movie
Not in the business.
No, but any
Just
part
to
of it.
ensure its legacy.
Yeah, I really don't want to speak on it because I work for the city, but all the things that she's taught, there's a million things out there. And you just gotta get behind and support it, neither one or don't.
Mhm.
We wanna do it, and I know that my wife will give any individual everything she knows about it, will help them with it. Because that is a legacy to her parents, to her. We do wanna see it stay here. We don't wanna tear it down, but we also have spent about $40,000 out of our pocket and ain't made a dime in the last 3 years. So we've continued to pay, and, there's times in life you make a decision, and it's just what it is. Hopefully, I think the community behind it, a lot of memories there, it's a lot of emotion.
A lot.
Emotion for me. My first date, I picked her up there. So, 1986. So, there's all that's there. But I'd love to see it saved. And there are people, I will not call names, but I've had people call me willing to offer $50,000.
Wow.
In this community.
Wow.
So, it's out there. You just gotta believe it. So,
It is out there. My husband and I have already had the conversation. We'll be the first platinum donors. That's on only the second. But we'd be happy to help. And I think you'd run across a lot more people willing to do the same.
Hey,
you can go say as far as there's a person still interested in buying it right now.
really?
I don't know if it's legal, like she said, I think that's something Ashley has to find out, but there is an individual here that would probably give you the $250,000. And for that option to do it, but I don't know if that's legal or not.
It's absolutely legal to do a seller concession on the back end of that deal, without a doubt.
I think it has to do with the.
They're never gonna give us $1 million and let us get rid of the building.
It's
It's never gonna happen.
Understanding
That
that
is
part of it,
absolutely not
but
gonna
my
happen.
understanding was the appropriation
Why
from the
not?
state
Because it's
just
taxpayer
required
money.
that
They're not
it
gonna
be
give you $1 million
funded,
for you to fix it
not
up
that
and
it
let you get
necessarily
rid
be
of it.
funded through city funds, but an endowment would do the same thing.
That's true, but there's other kind of things that we have to find out about as far as like the different things that are allowed.
Yeah, so if an endowment was available, I think that is, like I said, and Catherine said, it's the cleanest way. It's the cleanest way in and out for the city.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I severely doubt the state's gonna give us $1 million and then let us turn around and sell it. That's probably never gonna happen. But if they gave us the money and we were able to figure out another way to do it, where I like the idea of the Hippodrome and all that, of holding on to it, where we maintain possession of the property, however, somebody else runs it, I think that's absolutely the best option for us.
Ashley, can you answer that
The
question?
city of Gainesville contributes $250,000 a year to the Hippodrome. It's not free for the city anymore.
Well,
So
$250 for the city of Gainesville is like $2,500 for us.
Can anybody answer
Just
that
saying that.
question? Where, if we take the appropriations funding, regardless of where the matching funds, let's forget about the matching funds. If we take the $1.04 million, can we sell the building? That's a really big question to answer.
I doubt that very seriously.
At least not for years
So,
and years.
the meeting I'm supposed to have with the state, I called them this week, and I started asking those questions, but it wasn't the official meeting. So they're gonna get me someone who can answer those questions. They said they'd set it up this week. They haven't. I think what's going on is the appropriations list was just put out, and so everyone's trying to grab the same people, and they're just trying to get to everyone. So, so we're on the list for them to talk to. I did ask, questions about the timeline and all that sort of stuff. We're okay on the timeline. The guy told me we'll get all the questions answered. We're gonna make a plan together, and bring it to y'all and get all those questions answered. But I'm kind of at their mercy right now of when they'll talk to me, because they're so backlogged right now.
Yeah, and see, and that's where we are right now. We don't know where we at right now because we just got to sit down and plan this out, which we're able to do it. So it's too early in the ball game for us to say what we're going to do, what we can and cannot do. We just don't know. So we're going to have workshops. We're going to have to just plan it out. That's the bottom line.
The plan right now, since y'all gave me permission, we're getting the appraisal done. We met with Paul Stressing, updating the report. We're gonna see what, we want construction estimates. Obviously, you never know till they're bid, but we want some preliminary construction estimates with the report. So I was going to see what construction managers are available that we could maybe have a piggyback agreement with that y'all would approve, just to get estimates, not to move forward with any particular construction manager, but get the estimates and then start the workshops. That's kind of where we were at right now, and get the questions answered from the state. So we feel like those are the first steps we're taking.
Okay, thank you.
So the timeline that was in the appropriations packet that said acquisition or purchase would happen by September, we're not going to be bound by
No.
those, where
No.
it's a little looser than that?
It's totally looser,
Okay.
way looser.
Okay.
The conference that just got back from, there was a whole lot of discussion on appropriations, because a lot of the appropriations have a 365-day turnaround on them. And the state is having to change all the contracts due to the fact that materials aren't available and things along those lines. So there's a lot of language changing and a lot of things coming back. So it's going to be a moving target over the next couple of weeks, just as they start getting things together and get them out. Because there was like a bunch of vehicle acquisitions going like into South Florida from the hurricane, and manufacturers are 3 years out on some of these vehicles at this point. There's construction costs down there right now with acquisitions that are coming in way higher than what they expected. There's some municipalities right now seeing $1,600 a square foot for commercial.
Jesus.
So there's some backup and punt, and they're making them go back to fair market value, and there's a lot of things going on. Some of these contracts are being delayed because of that, because it's illegal. So just to let you know.
Yeah, when I talked to the person's name is Eric, and when I talked to him, I said, I just want to make sure we stay on the timeline and we don't do anything to lose the appropriation. He goes, you won't lose the appropriation, Ashley. So.
Thank you.
So we're at like 2.5 hours or something now. So maybe not do the SWOT analysis right now. We can maybe pick that up some other time. So I did, on your seats is the responses that y'all gave us, and we tallied. It's not really a survey, it's just what you picked from the book. And so if y'all remember, y'all put some green and yellow dots on things. The green we weighed 2 points, the yellow we weighed 1 point. And so that's how we came up with the ranking. I have a PowerPoint where I kind of put the list in order. What I might do is just send that to you, because I think right now you'll probably maybe fall asleep. So I'll go ahead and email y'all the PowerPoint. And what I did was I included anything that was a 1, 2, or no points, I didn't include. Okay, and so the first bullet point says 1. Was your highest priority. Number 2, if there were some things, there's 2 things like on number 2, that means they rank the same. So anyway, from 1 to however many numbers are in each department, you'll see what that is. And so from the next point is we will get the focus group meetings to get the survey out, and then we will have a wrap up with y'all. We'll come back and bring y'all the cumulative results, maybe a draft plan, But we really still need to go through core values and a mission statement as well. So I don't want to keep wearing y'all out, but we do kind of probably need to do that and do a session where y'all look at what we come up with, and then maybe another one, then adopt. I just want to do it right because there's so many important things here, and staff resources and money is very limited. So it's really important we focus on the right things. And I really want to seriously put the action plan with it and take this very seriously, because as Vice Mayor Ambrose mentioned, you know, the whole 10 years from now, he wants to make it look like it's planned. And, you know, and part of that is not just planning for the look of our community we drive down, but for all the departments, because one of my goals would be that, you know, if one day I'm ever not here for any reason, I want someone to feel like I left them in good order. You know, I want them to feel like we have the things we need, we have a good base, you know, there's not all these holes to plug, or there's not exposure places. We want to get the city in really good shape. So.
What I've asked this before, and I'll ask it again, because we can rank these things, but if we don't even have a WAG number on what an item costs, it's really hard to look at the cost between departments, because one department, their items 1 through 4 might be really doable, and in another department, their number one item might be out of reach, and we really need to be talking about items 2 and 3.
Okay, so
You know, so, and just, there's got to be something there so we know what costs are associated with at least the top 4 in each of the areas.
So we will, let us go through the focus groups and the citizen survey too, and then when we bring that initial, here's the set of priorities, the short and long term, then we will get, at that point, get those to you as well. So hopefully that the next round will have that. Give us a little time though, because we're finishing budget, so please give us like some weeks.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, I'm not asking, I don't care if you end up being $20,000 off on something.
Right.
I just want to know a difference on whether we're talking something that's under, you know, 3,000, is 50,000, is it 150,000, is it, what is it we're talking about? Because I had a really hard time with these rankings. And also some of them were related, like in the IT department, none of us ranked a new closet for the equipment, and yet we all wanted new servers, new this and new that. Well, where are you gonna put it?
Yeah.
If you're not
So
funding the place that didn't have the roof falling on it.
That's one of the things as well, that when we bring back, staff will review everything, and things that you didn't rank, we'll also say, but you really still have to do this.
Correct.
So we will definitely 100% take that into account. So, so that's what we'll do. It's not a short process, but I'd rather get it done right. So we have a working document that we're executing. So is there anything else anyone wants to add or anything? Okay, I'll consider me done right now.
All right, we done with community input session? I guess we are. All right, and final discussion, you concluded? So the next thing on here is motion to adjourn. All right, meeting